Hi, I'm the Thesterninator, and a couple weeks ago I worked on a video for unused type combinations in Pokemon. That video was a ton of fun. Really let me kind of experiment with my brain a little bit with these prompts that were almost half prompts, but see what we could do with them. And I didn't get to every single unused type combination. Why? I didn't have any ideas.
Just how dumb are you? It varies.
I couldn't figure out what to do with a bug dragon type, or a normal steel type, or just a normal bug type. So I sat down, went through all the comments, went through all your stuff on the Discord, which is down below, on how those ideas would work, and it really got my mental juices a-flowing, so I played around with what we could do. And that's what we did today. Not much more to go into on that, but yeah, a ton of fun. Let's take a look at what we were able to work up. Hello and welcome to the channel. I'm the Thesterninator, but my friends call me Stern, and today we are once again looking at some unused type combinations, finishing up our little collection that we started a couple videos ago, moving into our normal bug, our dragon bug, and our normal steel type Pokemon. With these three in our corner, combined with the Fakemon designed in the last video we did of this kind, we're gonna have a fully rounded out team. So let's go ahead and get started with our normal bug Pokemon. So I knew that for our normal bug type, I wanted to focus on the idea of a housefly. But being that bugs are creatures of metamorphosis and a lot of bug type do evolve, I had to start somewhere first. So I started with this maggot. And when I thought of the idea of a maggot, I thought about how they're just gross and disgusting and these just terrible little creatures. I don't think there's ever been anyone on Earth who's been excited to find one. But I also thought about the military. I thought about how in the military, that is a common phrase used to denote someone as being small or weak or just not listening, or I don't know. I think in movies like Full Metal Jacket, where that's the go-to insult from the drill sergeant, is calling his crew maggots. So I went with this vaguely militaristic vibe, mainly focusing on the idea of these things crashing into one another, being non-taught on how to act as Pokemon, and so I gave it this little bump on its head. Again, with that military inspiration, I also gave its tail this almost torpedo tail type of design where it has the fins on the back, and I put this little swirl on its head, both to imitate the idea of a baby and their little like curls of hair, but also to mimic the idea of stars or birds or planes swirling around this bump on the head like you see in old style cartoons. I think it's a ton of fun. And the Pokemon ended up being super simple, which makes a lot of sense, I think, because maggots and flies are fairly common and fairly simple little creatures. And so meet the first of our Pokemon today, Missalot, the grub Pokemon. This is our normal bug type, and for the shiny I wanted it to have those red eyes. Like, even though it is known for crashing and burning, it still has that fiery energy within it. Its stats aren't anything to write home about, but that's because this Pokemon must deal the final blow on a foe without dying to be able to evolve. It's that whole crash and burn type of mentality. When it's not able to do that, it gets so frustrated that it evolves into something that can do it better. So this Pokemon was the one that I first had in mind and then decided that it needed a pre-evolution. I thought about a fly, specifically one associated with running into windows, trying to get outside. So often I end up with a fly stuck in my car, banging into the window, and as soon as I roll the window down, it decides it doesn't want to be there anymore. Or stuck in the house, bashing into the door, and when I open the door, it decides, oh, I'll fly somewhere else. Almost like it wants to crash. So I came up with a fly-based Pokemon for our normal bug type. That's whole purpose is crashing. It even has this little helmet and these goggles to make it look like a fighter pilot, and then has these bent out wings. I based it on the idea of kamikaze tactics, of crashing being the whole point in the attack itself, and so it even has this bent little nose and is kind of nervous to be out and about flying, but it's very good at what it does, and you can accomplish getting this Pokemon by having your Missalot attack and finalize a fight, landing the finishing blow not on the last HP of the Pokemon it's fighting, but on the last Pokemon of the battle, usually ending up being someone's ace. So you do have to take that Pokemon into battle to get it to evolve into this Pokemon. Once it realizes that, man, I didn't get to crash, I didn't get to bash my head into something, it gets so frustrated that it evolves into something that can do that better. Thus, it gains this helmet, it gains these bent out of shape wings, it gains these goggles, and it gains this military style type of look to it as it evolves into this Pokemon. And I love this thing. I did a previous version of this on my Instagram years back, years and years and years back, and I wanted to retouch up on it, give it more of those motifs and ideas and concepts that allow it to have just a little bit more flavor, because I think before, when I designed it, I just kind of went with Fly as Pokemon. But now, as I've gotten older and learned a little bit more of the design aspects of Pokemon, through study and breaking down the designs of official artwork, I wanted to tie in a couple more elements to the inspiration for this, thus that military look. I love this guy. He went from being a bluish and yellowish and orangish type Pokemon, because I'm a big fan of Gen 3 when those types of colors were really big, to being much more inspired color-wise by the prompt. Normal bug Pokemon that I wanted to base off of the idea of Full Metal Jacket, movies of the like, and old war documentaries. So here he is. He's a ton of fun. I love this little guy, and I would be more than happy to have it on my team, even if it's just to complete the decks, because outside of that, he's not gonna be much help to you. So meet Kazafly. Kazafly is our normal bug Pokemon, gotten a little bit of an increase in that power there. Still not huge, but big enough that I wanted it to kind of fit that Ledian type of vibe for the size. Keeps that same type of energy for the shiny, where it has those red eyes and that brownish type of helmet and yellow color being replaced by that, so that it can feel a little bit more marine over army. And yeah, ton of fun. I like this design a lot, and I feel like there's a fun story to it. But moving right along, I want to hop into our normal Steel type. This was a Pokemon that was kind of so simple an idea, Steel, normal type, that I thought, surely this will be an easy task. I ended up being so flabbergasted with all the different concepts and ideas that we could go with that I was just kind of paralyzed, didn't know what to draw. Ultimately, I went with this armadillo type concept that just kind of sprang on me when I was doing our other drawings for this video. I thought, an armadillo, that works. What about an armored armadillo, a steel armadillo? I want to make sure that it doesn't fit the same type of niche that we see in other Pokemon like this. I know that Sandshoe and Sandslash are technically based on a pangolin, but I didn't want it to fit that same type of space. I wanted it to feel like its own design, so I gave it this big bulbous upper body and this long tail that's almost just the rest of its body, and wanted to keep in mind the idea that it could roll itself up, because if you're making an armadillo Pokemon, why wouldn't you have it roll itself up? I thought that it would be a lot of fun to even incorporate some aspects of our future Paradox forms into it. While it's not a future Paradox form itself, I wanted it to have that type of vibe. I wanted it to feel like a ball bearing, like a gyroscope, like it's this metal fixture, this tool that is just on top of an armadillo. And I don't know, I played around with it a lot, and I could come up with all sorts of reasons why I wanted it to have that Paradox aspect to it, but ultimately, it just felt really cool. It felt really fun. I don't draw a lot of Paradox Pokemon, maybe I should, but this was a good excuse and a good example of getting to play with that. I didn't give it all the aspects of a Paradox Pokemon. I didn't give it like the starry aspects of the pattern within the light areas. I didn't give it that digital eye type look, because while I wanted it to feel like a Paradox Pokemon, I didn't want it to technically fully be one. I just wanted to have a lot of fun with this design, and it ended up being one of my absolute favorites. I might even venture to say it's my favorite of all the Pokemon that I've designed. I would say that, until I got to our last Pokemon of the video, and then I said, oh no, I was wrong, that one's my favorite, but this one is still really fun, really cool, and I think it's just such a cool concept. I'd love to see Pokemon utilize a mechanic like this and using that Paradox Pokemon vibe. And thus we have Gyrillo, the name coming from gyroid and gyrate, meaning to move in a circle, as well as armadillo. It is the ball-bearing Pokemon and is normal Steel type. For the shiny, I wanted to give it just a little bit of a bump of something exciting, so I gave it that pinkish type of glow. And it's pretty hefty in power. I see this very much like a Victory Road type of Pokemon, one that you'd catch there, almost kind of fulfilling that more Endurant role for that area in the game, of just being the single stage, powerful Pokemon found on Victory Road. And I love it. This, I know I designed it, but it is such a cool design. The only problem with a cool and fun design like that is you feel like you have to outdo it. You have to go bigger. You have to go better. And I feel like I am on the right track. You'll have to let me know down in the comments. While you're down there, let me know what abilities these Pokemon should have, because you guys are so much better at that than I am, honestly, truly. I love reading all the different abilities and dex entries and different names that these Pokemon would have if found, and that's all just a ton of fun. But for this design, I actually did this while listening to an entire lore breakdown by Wendigoon on the Backrooms. Every Wednesday, we do a poll of what's gonna be that video. I drop that poll on my Patreon for free Monday night. It runs all day Tuesday, and then Tuesday night I find out what that's gonna be. Backrooms has been on there for a while, and it's something I don't know a ton about, so I went researching and learning about it. While doing that, I think a lot of the weird and just H.P. Lovecraft inspired type of lore of that world really instilled in me something that I wanted to put into this Pokemon. So it is this big living tongue type of Pokemon, designed after those parasites that work their way into fish and then steal their tongues and eat them and then replace the tongues that they too can eat what the fish is eating. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look it up. It is insane and was great inspiration for this Pokemon. While it's not aquatic type, it is still going to be a bug type in some aspects, and I felt like it was a really good direction to go, especially for what we're gonna get after this design. But before we can get there, we have to start with Langrub, the false face Pokemon. It is a pure bug type, and for the shiny, I wanted that vibrant green, just because, again, I know I reference this movie a lot, but James and the Giant Peach has the pickled alligator tongues, which are these glowing green little wormy things, and I thought, that makes sense, that's fun. So I made it green for the shiny. Doesn't have a ton of power yet, and is a very small Pokemon, but it's gonna get a lot cooler. I picture it moving that headpiece around like a tongue, being able to whip around, and it's disgusting, and cool, and gross, and fascinating, and just nightmare-inducing altogether. But that's kind of what we do here, so I guess it works. Our last design of the day is our dragon bug type Pokemon. Our Langrub, whose name is a play on language, and lang as in tongue in Latin, now is going to evolve into something much bigger, much more terrifying, and it's going to give a lot of credence as to why it is a tongue-based Pokemon. Because for our dragon bug type Pokemon, I wanted to create something that was mimicry. Its whole concept is that it is this little bug that makes itself appear so much bigger, so much more terrifying by its tail and the top of its head mimicking the jaws of a great dragon. I think a lot about how actual real world bugs do this. There's a caterpillar which actually its tail inflates when it feels threatened to look like a snake or a viper, and it makes birds kind of run away or flap away in terror because they don't want to get attacked by a snake. I don't want to get attacked by a snake, so I am just like those birds, running away from that terrifying little bug, and I think that's really cool. So why not take that aspect and apply it onto this Pokemon, and rather than a snake, apply a draconic giant head just floating throughout the trees. Imagine this. I know it's just the head, but imagine this. You're walking through the forest seeking these bug Pokemon that don't want to be captured, and you're about to pounce on one. You're about to jump through the bushes and catch this thing that you hear on the other side, when rather than a bug, a giant dragon head bursts forth. You're on Route 3 or 4. You're not prepared to take on a giant dragon, let alone one that looks like it's a pseudo-legendary given its coloring and its size and its power. So you run off, and this Pokemon gets to live in freedom for another day. For the colors, I wanted to find ways to incorporate that dragon energy. This thing is trying in every way to convince you that it's a dragon and not a little bug. So I wanted to bring in those pinks and those bluishes and those grayishes and those blackishes and those things like that to try and make it feel very dragon. Even if you're an expert in this Pokemon world and you come across this thing, your first instinct probably isn't going to be, it's a bug mimicking a dragon. Your first instinct is going to be, I need to run as fast as I can and as far away as I can and never come back here again. Which is exactly what this Pokemon wants you to do. So I played around with it a lot, and its big head tail thing, I picture Langrubs kind of sitting in there to be protected by their mama Pokemon, just further making this look like a dragon as that tongue moves around wildly. It's a Pokemon that works in tandem and works together to ensure that it doesn't get caught. I always wondered about that. Do Pokemon like being caught? I guess sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. I guess it's a personality thing, but I guess a lot of my Pokemon kind of come from real world type of animals who don't want to be captured. But regardless, I think that there's a fun aspect to a Pokemon that doesn't want to be captured and has adapted to keep away bigger Pokemon as well as trainers. And so we have Dracranium, the false face Pokemon. Bug dragon type. For the shiny, I want that same greenish type of glow that makes it so that it still fits in with our Langrub. And it has gotten much bigger, you can see by the size. It is very powerful, not crazy powerful, but pretty dang good. It's pretty well able to stand its ground in a fight. And yeah, this is a toss-up for me, whether I like our Gyrillo or I like our Dracranium. Which one I like most, I should say. I like them both, but which one I like most. I'd love to hear what you think down in the comments, and let me know on the Discord too. Our Discord is linked down below. We have a very quickly growing community there, about to reach 1,000 followers on there, so join. Maybe you'll be number 1,000. We're gonna be doing some giveaways and stuff following that, so it'll be a ton of fun. Its name is a reference to Drac, meaning dragon, Draco type of stuff, and Cranium, which is the skull of the head. A play on cranium and lang, meaning tongue and skull. So lots of fun stuff with this design. And so we have all of the unused type combinations accounted for. But I don't think I'm satisfied yet. I feel like there's a lot of Pokemon type combinations that have had their place, have been officially used as Pokemon designs, but were just disappointing. I look at concepts like Skullvillain and man, we had so many cool ideas and so many cool ways that we could have handled this, and it just didn't happen. So maybe in a future video, I'll look at some of the type combinations that have been used and are specific to one Pokemon or one variation of a Pokemon, and how we could bring those to fruition instead. I'd really like to look at fire grass type. I have an old Pokemon called Bombrero, which was a scarecrow that launched bombs, that I'd love to revisit for that type of stuff. Let me know down in the comments. Join us on the Discord so that I can hear what you guys are talking about. We can be in conversation over this stuff, and don't forget to find me on the Patreon. With all that said, it sounds like you know where to find me, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye.